6 terrifying theme park accidents, fatal falls, shocking malfunctions, moments captured on camera that parks never wanted you to see. These stories will make you think twice before strapping in for a ride ever again. 1. The Accelerator. Knott's Berry Farm. September 15th, 2009. Clear afternoon at Knott's Berry Farm, Southern California. Perfect weather for roller coasters. 12-year-old Kyle Wheeler and his father, Russell, were there for one reason to ride the Accelerator. The coaster was legendary. Sleek red and silver blur. 0 to 82 miles per hour in just over 2 seconds, rocketing straight up a 205-foot steel tower before plunging back toward Earth. For Kyle, it was everything a kid could dream of. Speed, air, weightlessness. His mother, Anita Wheeler, watched from below, camera ready. What was supposed to be a perfect late summer afternoon would soon become one of the most horrifying moments ever captured on a theme park ride. Because seconds after launch, something gave way. As the coaster train lined up for launch, a loud metallic creak echoed through the station, barely noticeable over the roar of hydraulics. Then, without warning, the thick launch cable snapped. The moment was recorded on video. You can see the cable whip loose, sending metal fragments flying in every direction. The train jerks forward, begins to climb, then horrifyingly slides back down into the station. Kyle Wheeler, seated in the front row, took the brunt of it. The cable lashed across his left leg, splitting the fiberglass car in half and lacerating deep into his muscle. His father, Russell, sitting right beside him, saw it all happen. Showered with debris, nearly struck in the face. Anita, watching from the ground, could only scream. Frozen as the coaster she'd just seen speed off suddenly came crawling back, broken and silent. Later, in an online chat room, she wrote, "I literally thought I had just watched my son and husband die in front of my eyes." Paramedics arrived within minutes. Kyle was rushed to the hospital, his leg badly injured. In the months that followed, Kyle endured multiple surgeries, repairing shredded tissue, grafting skin, slowly learning to walk again through painful physical therapy. The investigation painted a devastating picture. The state's Division of Occupational Safety and Health found that the cable showed gross amounts of fatigue. 18 of the 20 launch magnets beneath the train had been sheared off by the force. Inspectors determined that the accident could have been prevented with proper maintenance. Blame fell on both the theme park and the ride manufacturer, Switzerland-based Intamin. Intamin had advised monthly inspections of the launch cable. Knott's, however, inspected the ride only once every 6 months. By the time of the accident, they were nearly 3 weeks behind schedule. The manufacturer's wording on inspection intervals was described as confusing and unclear, but regulators agreed warning signs had been missed. For Anita and Russell Wheeler, none of that mattered anymore. Their son's life had been changed forever. "We're just traumatized," she told a local newspaper. "Our lives have been changed forever." In 2011, the Wheeler family reached a confidential settlement with Knott's Berry Farm's parent company, Cedar Fair. The agreement covered Kyle's medical expenses, more than $60,000 at the time, and future surgeries to remove scar tissue from his leg. More than a year after the accident, Accelerator reopened. The park replaced the launch system, reinforced the track, and promised stricter inspections. Today it still runs, same speed, same drop, same thrill. But for those who remember September 15th, 2009, that sound, the snap of steel under pressure, still echoes. A reminder that even the strongest metal can break. And when it does, lives can change in an instant. 2. The Lagoon Sky Ride, the 50-foot fall. August 14th, 2021. Warm summer evening at Lagoon Amusement Park in Farmington, Utah. The kind of night families go for one last ride before the sun dips behind the mountains. Among the crowd that day was a 32-year-old man visiting the park alone. No one paid him much attention as he boarded one of Lagoon's most peaceful attractions, the Sky Ride. Unlike the park's towering roller coasters, the Sky Ride wasn't built for thrills. It was a slow-moving cable lift carrying guests 50 feet above the ground from one end of the park to the other. A quiet glide over the laughter, flashing lights, and distant music below. As the gondola began its climb, everything looked normal. But then, halfway across the park, witnesses began to notice something strange. A man was hanging from the side of the moving chair, one hand gripping the safety bar, legs dangling freely above the concrete below. Some laughed, others pulled out their phones. One of them caught it on video. "Lucy Grace Estella, there's some guy hanging on that ride. Why he's doing like that? thinking this is just a professional gymnast or a stunt. But this wasn't a stunt. Beneath him, hundreds of parkgoers began to shout, "Hold on! Don't let go!" The sky ride kept moving, carrying him farther across the park as gasps spread through the crowd. And then in a matter of seconds, the worst possible thing happened. He fell. The fall was roughly 50 feet, enough to cause catastrophic injuries. Witnesses described the sound as a thud that silenced everything. Paramedics rushed to the scene, finding the man unresponsive but still alive. He was airlifted to the University of Utah Hospital in critical condition. Doctors fought to save his life, but unfortunately, he wouldn't make it. 2 days later, police confirmed that the man had died from his injuries. They didn't release his name, honoring his family's request for privacy. What they did say was that the fall was not intentional. The ride, according to both park officials and state investigators, had not malfunctioned. It had passed inspection that very morning, the same inspection routine it had followed without issue since the ride first opened in 1974. For nearly 50 years, Lagoon Sky Ride had carried millions safely across the park. Not once had anyone fallen. Until that night, investigators said the man was riding alone. No safety bar failure was reported. Witnesses recalled that he didn't appear to be struggling, just hanging there, suspended in eerie calm. Police couldn't confirm whether he had stood up, slipped, or leaned too far over the edge, and then rumors began to spread online. Some claimed he had been intoxicated. Others whispered darker theories that it might have been a suicide. Despite police statements to the contrary, without any footage beyond those few haunting clips, no one would ever know for certain. Lagoon officials expressed their condolences in a public statement. Their spokesman, Adam Lishman, who has been at Lagoon for 30 years, said he could not recall another time in his tenure when someone had fallen off a ride. "Not in my time here." No. Fortunately, no. We're deeply concerned for the individual and his family. We're also deeply concerned for the employees and guests who were impacted by this event. The Farmington Police Department concluded there was no evidence of a ride malfunction. The investigation was closed without charges. Still, the footage remains online. A man dangling calmly above the park. The crowd screams echoing below. For many who were there, that image has never left their minds. And strangely, it wouldn't be the last time something like this happened. Almost 4 years later, in July 2025, a nearly identical scene unfolded. This time caught on a viral phone clip. A young man was filmed hanging from the exact same sky ride, his legs kicking as park guests scream below. Security and paramedics rushed to the scene, pulling him down before tragedy could repeat itself. Many called him a copycat, imitating the 2021 fall, a haunting echo of a moment that should never have been repeated. The man survived, but for those who remember the first fall, that brief rescue felt like borrowed time, as if the sky ride itself had become a silent reminder that even the calmest attractions can hold the darkest stories. 3. The Discovery. Ahmedabad, India, July 14th, 2019. Busy Sunday evening at Kankaria Amusement Park in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, India, a place filled with music, color, and the sound of laughter echoing across the lake. Families gathered near the park's main attraction, a massive pendulum-style thrill ride called Discovery. For 32 people strapped into their seats, it was supposed to be a few minutes of excitement. A swing through the air, a scream, a laugh before dinner. The ride began to move. Slowly at first, then higher and faster. Its circular frame cutting across the sky as spectators watched from below. And then in an instant, the unthinkable. At 5:40 p.m., as the ride reached full swing, a loud metallic crack split the air. The enormous steel arm holding the passenger gondola snapped in half. The seats and riders, still strapped in, were sent hurtling downward, crashing into the ride's main structure with a deafening impact. The moment was captured on video. You can see the pendulum rising to its peak, then folding violently in midair. Dust and debris fill the screen. The screaming stops. Silence takes over. Then comes fear. Witnesses say the sound of the impact could be heard across the park. 2 people later identified as 24-year-old Manali Rajvati and 22-year-old Mohammed Zayed were killed instantly. 28 others were rushed to LG Hospital, many of them in critical condition. "The pipe of the main shaft broke and crashed on the ground," said Fire Chief M.F. Daster, one of the first responders at the scene. How that pipe broke is a matter of investigation by the Forensic Science Laboratory. The Discovery ride had a capacity of 32 seats. That day, 31 were filled. Investigators determined that the thick steel shaft connecting the passenger gondola to the ride's support column had fractured. A clean break, caused by metal fatigue, or possibly a hydraulic failure. The owners of the ride, a father and son named Ganesh Cham and Bhavesh Patel, claimed the machine had passed all inspections. They presented years of maintenance certificates and government clearances. "We take all possible care," they said. "We had continuous inspections and clearance for the past 4 years. We still don't know how it broke." But for those at the park, the scene was beyond comprehension. Video taken moments after the collapse shows mangled metal, shattered bolts, and twisted beams. The gondola crushed against the concrete platform. Survivors can be heard crying out for help as rescue workers tear through the wreckage. Ahmedabad's mayor, Bijal Patel, confirmed the scale of the disaster that evening. 29 people were brought to the hospital. 2 died on the spot. The rest are being treated. Within hours, the municipal commissioner, Vijay Nehra, ordered a criminal investigation to determine the exact cause of the accident. Soon after, 6 people, including the managing director of the park, were charged with culpable homicide not amounting to murder. Police alleged gross negligence and mechanical failure due to poor maintenance. One eyewitness later told reporters, "It was like the ground opened up. They fell with the ride. It didn't stop. It just shattered." 2 young lives lost instantly. Dozens more scarred forever, many with broken limbs, crushed ribs, or severe head injuries. The investigation would later reveal that while the operators possessed the correct licenses, routine stress testing of the steel arm had not been conducted. Experts describe the ride's failure as a catastrophic fatigue fracture, meaning the metal had been weakening for months, maybe years, without anyone noticing. In India, the tragedy reignited national debate over the lack of safety regulation in amusement parks. But for the families of Manali and Mohammed, no investigation or reform could undo that moment. The Discovery ride was dismantled shortly after. What remained of its steel frame was left as evidence, a monument to how one broken pipe could bring down an entire machine and the lives strapped to it. And while many prefer to forget, the video of that collapse still circulates online, a haunting reminder of how thin the line can be between thrill and tragedy. 4. The 360 Big Pendulum. Green Mountain Park, Saudi Arabia. July 31st, 2025. Warm summer night in Saudi Arabia's Al-Hada region of Taif, near the city of Jeddah. At an amusement park called Green Mountain Park, something happened that would leave the world in shock. It was meant to be a peaceful night out. Cool air, mountain views, laughter echoing through the hills near Jeddah. But for those who stepped onto the 360 Big Pendulum, the night would soon turn into a nightmare. The 360 Big Pendulum, a well-known amusement ride, suddenly snapped in half, leaving 23 people injured and thousands in shock. What happened that night was no accident. Something went terribly wrong, something that could have been prevented. As the ride begins to move, it gathers momentum. Swing after swing, edging toward a full rotation. It never gets there. Seconds before peak speed, the structure fails. A snap. Then steel and seats collapse into the platform. Panic detonates. Onlookers stumble backward. Others rush forward, shouting over the terrified screams that follow. Witnesses later describe a surge of terror and disbelief as the carriage slams down and the crowd breaks into a run. By the time responders arrive, the scale is clear. 23 injured. 3 in critical condition, treated on site and rushed to nearby hospitals while authorities seal the scene and order the park shut pending investigation. Some outlets note that the passenger wheel appears to land relatively flat, a grim stroke of luck that may help explain why no fatalities were reported. The accident prompted the region's governor, Saud bin Nahar, to immediately close the park and launch a full investigation into the cause of the crash. Authorities also began inspecting the park's other rides for potential safety issues. While the investigation is still ongoing to this day, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission pointed to possible causes, including poor maintenance, faulty ride design, or manufacturer defects. No matter what caused this failure, the result is the same: a tragedy that reminds us how quickly excitement can turn to fear, and how even the happiest places aren't always safe. 5. The Flying Chairs, Shaoyang, China. February 13th, 2021. Clear afternoon in Shaoyang, a city in China's Hunan province. Families had gathered to celebrate the Lunar New Year. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and the rhythmic hum of spinning rides. At the center of the fairground stood one of its biggest attractions, the flying chairs. A colorful swing ride that lifted dozens of riders into the air, spinning them in wide circles high above the crowd below. At 3:40 p.m., the ride began just like any other time. The chains tightened, the seats lifted. But this time was different. No one knew it would be the ride's last. Witnesses said they heard an alarm, a sharp mechanical sound that cut through the music. The ride started spinning faster and faster, and then in a split second, it all gave way. The entire swing assembly detaches from its axis, slamming violently into the ground. Metal shards and broken seats scatter across the pavement. Screams fill the air as riders and bystanders are thrown to the ground. When the dust settles, chaos takes over. 16 people, both riders and onlookers, are left injured, 3 of them critically. One witness told the Beijing News. The swing ride gathered speed and was going faster and faster. Then it fell off and hit the ground. Most of the injured were onlookers. Fortunately, we ran away quickly. Otherwise, we would have been hit as well. Local authorities arrived within minutes. Paramedics carried the wounded to nearby hospitals while police cordoned off the area. The bright, festive music of the fair had stopped entirely, replaced by the sound of sirens. Officials later confirmed the cause, a mechanical glitch. The park's management claimed that the ride had passed all safety checks less than a month earlier, just before the Lunar New Year celebrations began. But according to investigators, a faulty switch caused the system to lose control, accelerating the rotation until the entire structure collapsed under its own momentum. The amusement park was immediately shut down. Several staff members were taken into custody for questioning. Videos of the incident began spreading across Chinese social media within hours. First from bystanders, then from one of the riders themselves. The footage captured the terrifying moment when their screams of excitement turned into cries for help. For many in Hunan, the sight was impossible to forget. A blur of color, motion, and panic that ended in silence. And though no one died that day, 16 people walked away changed forever. A reminder that even the most ordinary moments of fun can turn in an instant. 6. The Fireball. Ohio State Fair, July 26, 2017. Opening night at the Ohio State Fair in Columbus, Ohio. The smell of popcorn. The flash of carnival lights. The sound of laughter filled the air. The Fireball, one of the fair's star attractions, loomed high above it all. A massive pendulum that swung riders 40 feet into the air while spinning them at 13 revolutions per minute. That night, dozens lined up for the thrill. Among them was 18-year-old Tyler Jarrell, a recent high school graduate who had just enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps. His girlfriend, Keziah Lewis, stood by his side, nervous but smiling. It was supposed to be a simple ride. One last rush before heading off to training. The Fireball lifted into motion, gathering speed. Music blared through the speakers. The crowd below craned their necks to watch the bright red machine slicing through the air. Then, without warning, something went horribly wrong. At 7:24 p.m., the pendulum reached its peak, and a massive crack echoed through the fairgrounds. A full row of seats with riders still strapped in tore free from the arm of the ride and snapped into the air. In an instant, metal and bodies were thrown outward. Witnesses later said 2 riders were launched nearly 20 feet before hitting the concrete. Others were struck by flying debris. 18-year-old Tyler Jarrell was killed instantly, his body thrown clear of the ride. 7 others were rushed to nearby hospitals, several in critical condition. Keziah Lewis, his girlfriend, survived but suffered devastating injuries. Crushed bones, internal trauma, more than $2 million in medical costs that would follow her for years. Franklin County Coroner Anahi Ortiz later confirmed Tyler's cause of death: blunt force trauma to the head, chest, and lower body. His father described him as a young man who had a future until the disaster at the fair. The tragedy sent shockwaves across the country. For many, the question was simple: how could this happen? The Fireball had passed multiple inspections in the days before the accident. The state's chief ride inspector, Michael Vartarella, stated that it had been examined 3 or 4 times over 2 days. Cleared to operate. Even that same morning, engineers had signed off. Yet, as later investigations revealed, there was a flaw no one could see. According to KMG International, the ride's Dutch manufacturer, the Fireball's gondola support beam, the core steel tube that held the swinging arm, was suffering from excessive internal corrosion. The metal's wall thickness had been eaten away by years of stress and moisture, leaving only a fragile shell. The Fireball, despite the tragedy, continues to operate under different names across the U.S. including some fairs in Ohio. The manufacturer insists that all models are now safe, rebuilt under new inspection standards. Still, for those who remember that night, the sound of metal snapping, the crowd screaming, the chaos that followed the image of the fireball breaking apart mid-air remains impossible to forget. The terrifying reality. Every ride starts with excitement, but history shows it doesn't always end that way. These stories prove how a single loose bolt or a snapped cable can turn fun into tragedy in an instant. 6 accidents. 6 moments captured on camera that parks never wanted you to see. A reminder that even the strongest steel can break. And when it does, lives can change or end in a heartbeat.